Now we're doing a question and answer. Shalom, shalom. Erev Tov, Kol Yisrael. Thanking you for joining us on this evening. We came up with the idea, last year we did the tutorials before the season began. And this year we won't have any live tutorials. We are sorry that we weren't able to do live tutorials for you, but what we wanted to do to help those who might have any last minute questions or just questions, period, about different products, foods they may have heard about, what we cannot have, how do I do certain things, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable during this season. We wanted to try to come on and answer those questions to the best of our ability for you. And for those who will join us, there are many different roads that we have come through on. So many people have different thoughts, different ways that they was taught of doing things. So we want to share those ideas and see if we can come to some type of space where we're all comfortable so that when the season begins, that we're not living through the season in unsurety. We want to be sure that everything that's in our homes is acceptable and that we don't feel uneasy. So we have the chat open so that if you have any questions, you can chat them in. Those who are on the Zoom can just unmute yourself, let us know you have a question, and we will try our best to get it answered. And if you have any information, such as those of you who cook, who are out there in the world of cooking or dealing with food preparation, or even if you just came across some information and you want to share it because it'll be helpful to people in their getting rid of their stuff out of their homes or what they can and cannot bring in, we ask you to please chime in and share that information with people. For example, I'll give you my example in a minute, but first we want to ask the Creator to be with us and to let wisdom be amongst us so that we may ask wise questions, receive wise answers, and that He may cause what we're doing here to prosper and be helpful. Hallelujah. Giving thanks unto thee, Most High, great King of the universe, for another opportunity to come together as a family to prepare ourselves, even in the last moments, for that great season of redemption, that Exodus, the memorial thereof. We ask that you will let wisdom abide with us and be in the midst of us, that we may share information and spread that news that would be well with us, that might help us along the way through this season. We ask that you will continue to be with the sick, the mourners, and be with those who are less fortunate, and all those who have suffered from tragedies in whatever places they may be. We bless and give thanks to your name always. Amen. So, as I was saying, for example, how many people deal with baking soda, baking powder, and this is why I did the question and answer period, because a question was raised as to can we use baking soda? Can we use baking powder? Right? Because if you go to a lot of places, if you've been to Jewish markets during this season and shopping and getting prepared and purchasing things, you'll see baking soda there. You'll see different things that people that they sell. And you're like, well, how are they eating this? Why is this good? How is it good? When I was raised and told that we can't have, like you'll see cake mixes. Say, well, cake can't be good. It's Pesach. How are we going to eat cake? So another thing was egg. People say use egg whites and stuff like that to make things rise. And the question is, people say, nope, can't do that. Okay, so can you eat eggs? Because as an egg. So we just want to answer some of those questions that you may have. And until you come in with a question or type it in the chat, okay, I have one. Please speak about why vinegars are to be put out. I was taught that grain vinegars, distilled vinegars. All right, first question of the evening. Let me take this off. Give me a second. Hitting too many buttons. It's to be put out, but vinegars from fruit, apple cider, vinegar is kosher for Passover. Your thoughts? Okay. Now, let me give you the whole concept of the vinegar. Okay. Okay, first, before I give you the concept of vinegar, let me go back to the beginning. The Torah says that we must remove leaven out of our houses. Now, we're not talking on the spiritual level. This is all about physical things, foods and products like that. So when you look up the definition of leaven on the internet, just broad internet, right? It tells you anything that causes things to rise. And it could be a chemical leavening, it could be a grain leavening. So those things are like the baking powders and things of that nature are not to be used. Now, that's the definition. When you go to a rabbinic definition, right, it says there are five grains that are considered to be low tov. They are not good to have during the season, and anything that's made from them is not to be used during this season. So I'm going to share this information with you, and don't worry, I'm going to get into the question and we'll answer it. Leaven, this is just a dictionary definition. Leaven refers to a substance like yeast or baking powder or other things that causes dough or batter to rise or expand during fermentation, or an influence that subtly alters or modifies something. In baking, leaven refers to a substance used to produce fermentation and cause dough or batter to rise, such as yeast, baking powder, or baking soda. All right. Now we know in the Torah it said that they didn't have time to put their leaven in the dough to make it rise. And then leaven was just pieces of dough that were left out that had become fermented, right, through grain fermentation, and adding it to the process of making the bread would cause it to rise. Now, according to, and I'm sharing all this with you because this is what you see and what you read when you go out into the world. Okay. Chametz. Chametz is defined amongst the older sages, the rabbinics, as wheat, barley, rye, oats, and spelt. These grains are prohibited during this season. When mixed with water and allowed to sit for more than 18 minutes, as they will rise excuse me, or begin to leaven. So those 5 grains are forbidden. So there are a lot of people who believe that as long as they don't eat anything that's made from those 5 grains, right, it's okay. So if you have a chemical leavening agent or things of that nature, it is considered to be okay. And I'm going to go back to this, but I want to jump into the question because that's what we're here for. I'm going to read it again. Please speak about why vinegars are to be put out. I was taught that grain vinegars, which we just talked about 5 grains, but vinegars from fruit, apple cider vinegar is kosher for Passover. Your thoughts? So I'm going to ask y'all, and I'm going to share these things with you. Because this is a good one, and it's one that's been asked about forever. Vinegar's Passover status depends on its source. Malted vinegar is made from barley, which is considered definitely chametz according to the rabbinic because it comes from barley. Wine vinegar and apple cider vinegar are allowed because they are made from fruit and not the grain, right? White distilled vinegar. I'm just going to tell you because you'll see all these things in the store. Is more complex because it comes from various sources. A lot of it is made with corn. In certain communities, they don't eat corn during this season because it is considered what they call a kitniot, corn and rice. Certain beans are considered kitniot, right? And they are not good to eat during this season. So why the discrepancy with the vinegar? We'll do that one first. What does the Torah say? The Torah says leaven. So now we know that when the Torah was written, it was based upon one thing, that this whole season is a memorial, right? And based on that fact, bread, it says leaven is to be removed from your homes. How many things did we use leavening for but to bake bread, right? And so now we find so many things in this modern day age, so many chemicals that can be used to do the same job that ancient yeast, old time yeast would do. The Torah uses the word chametz, which is leaven, and it uses the word seor, which by definition means to sour, that which is sour, right? So many people said, well, anything that's sour, vinegar, anything of that context would be low tov, no good for us because of that particular word. But we have to be careful when we say things that would sour, because it is my personal belief that many things can sour And I do not feel that that's what the Torah was talking about. This was all based upon a memorial that we was eating. But again, we're in modern times and we have to really be careful of things that are put out there. But anything that's made from fruit vinegars, I don't have a problem with it. Now, many people do, but it's fruit, right? It's not used as a leavening agent. It's not used to bake bread. It might be used to flavor bread if you like vinegar bread or something of that nature, but it's not used for that purpose. And why do I say that? Because let's move over to wine, right? Wine falls almost in the same category, right? Is wine good during this season? A lot of people say no, because, that's fermented, but it's fruit, right? It's fruit. And there was a wine offering didn't stop during this season. You had the meal offering, the drink offering, and it didn't stop during this season. So when you go to the store and you see kosher for Passover vinegar, that means it's not made with any grain. Kosher for Passover wine, it means that it's not been fermented with any grain. It's just fruit fermented. It just sat. That's what builds up the alcohol in the wine. And it's especially, unlike the year-round wine, Passover wine is prepared in a special space where there is no contamination of grain. There is put where there could be no way that grain can get into it to contaminate it. So those vinegars that you have that are made from fruit, such as apple cider, and things like that, I don't have a problem with it. But there are those other communities who say anything that's sours or that is in that condition, they don't partake of it. So I hope this answers your question. But to be on the safe side, if you have to have vinegar or it's something that you use on a regular basis, right? Like balsamic vinegar is from grapes, right? Find those vinegars that are fruit, the ones that say kosher for Passover, and we pray that it will get you through the season. If you still are that debated about it and you're still uneasy, Rabbi Yisrael used to say, when in doubt, just leave it out. If you're not sure or you feel you just can't come to terms with it, leave it out for the week if you can't seem to get by it, right? So we want to share some of these things with you. Most of us prepare our homes, we remove the things that we know are there. Let's go with flour because most of us use flour. But during the season, we try to use organic or stone grain mill flour, right? Wheat flour, not any bleached flour, not anything of that nature. Just whole stone ground wheat flour when we make our matzahs, right? Because there's nothing in it. And when you read the ingredients, there's nothing else added into it but just ground wheat, right? So I pray that answered your question. And let's talk about matzahs because we're commanded to eat them for 7 days. Last year we had tutorials. Many people have different varieties of matzahs. You can add spices, you can add this to it. But making the matzah, if you're going to make matzahs, okay, at your home, when you take that flour and you take that water and you mix it, I used to hear people say, oh, that's crazy to say it has to be done in 18 minutes. Well, speaking to people who deal with food and are in the food industry and have been to places where matzahs are made and watched the matzah process taking place, the making taking place, if you leave that water and flour sitting, it begins to go through a process. Now, you look at it, it doesn't look any different to you, but it begins to go through a process. Once that water is added to it, it begins to go through a process. That is why we ask you, if you're going to make matzahs at home, do it in small batches. Just don't get a big, huge bowl and say, I'm going to mix up enough dough to make 100 matzahs. Make them a little, because the longer it sits, the process of fermentation begins, and then that dough actually becomes fermented after a while, and it can be used as leavening. Alcohol, drinking, Hennessy, Crown Royal, whatever people drink, we put these away during this season because they're made from grain. They're made from grain. And we don't know, since it's not made by us, we know for a surety that it is some kind of contaminants and that it would be unsafe for us to use. Right? So we do have in our community, if you go back and you look at the YouTube, and I'm going to get the link for Yaya's Kitchen, Gevert Yerusha's Kitchen. Prayerfully still have the link, and it's still on there, where she had the tutorial and she teaches you how to make mayonnaise and ketchup for the season. Right at home. I guess it's pretty simple. I don't delve into making that. I've never done it myself, but it's pretty simple. So what do we eat during the week? We try our best to not eat any canned goods, anything that has been packaged or preserved. We try to eat fresh as we can. Potatoes is a big staple during this week, right? Because we can't trust the rice. Rice is good for some, but there are a lot of people in our communities that do not eat rice. It was considered, and it's still considered, one of the kitniot in a lot of communities. And a lot of people still don't partake of rice or beans. And we just have to respect their thoughts and their beliefs, right? So another question that comes to my mind that people ask frequently is medicine. Well, how do I know if the medicine that the doctor prescribed me is kosher for Passover? Well, I can promise you that you're not going to see a label on your medicine that says kosher for Passover. Okay? But what I will tell you is, if you are on any medication that you must have, there are people that have medications that they cannot go without. They can't. Whatever condition they have, they can't. Please take your medicine. Do not take on the spirit of the Most High will carry me through. And when I say that, I have the utmost faith in the Creator, right? But we have to be smart. and use the things that are here and preserve life. So if you are on any type of medication, please take your medication so that you can continue to be well on a daily basis. Is there any other food products that maybe you are not sure about when it comes to this season? Any other food products that you might say, hey, can we have this? Can we not have this? Okay. Rabbi said toothpaste. She said toothpaste. We'll do toothpaste, then we'll do cheese. Okay. Toothpaste is basically made of chemicals, except for those organic or holistic toothpastes that are made from herbs. Now, I'm just giving you points of reference growing up. Growing up, we had kosher for Passover toothpaste because everything in our house said, if it didn't say kosher for Passover, basically, we didn't have it, with the exception of flour and things of that nature. We didn't have it. Today, a lot of people, I think, is Tom's toothpaste is used because there are a lot of questions about the chemicals that go into toothpaste. So a lot of people use Tom's toothpaste during this season. Okay. I don't really get into the things with soaps and things of that nature since I don't eat soap and things like that. But whatever goes in our mouth is my greatest concern. So I'm going to get into cheeses, but I'm going to share this information with you before we get into the cheese. Okay. Okay. Non-food products. I'm going to start with non-food products. What are non-food products? Paper plates, uh, aluminum foil, plastic dishes, and things of that nature are acceptable, right? You wouldn't even think about a plate, a paper plate that you eat off of. But let me tell you something that we've discovered with paper plates. A lot of the paper plates, you know, the ones that they make with the coating so your food doesn't seep through the plate, is made with cornstarch, a type of cornstarch, right? And a lot of people don't eat corn. So if you are one of these people that respectfully follow that rule in your home where you don't eat corn, the kidney oat, right? Be careful of the paper product that you use because it is in a lot of the coatings on the plates that you use. Okay. Also, baby formula. So a lot of people have babies. They're feeding their babies. I have a list here, and it says that 365 Alsoy, Enfamil, Empacare, Isomil, Prosobi, and things are all acceptable to use during this season baby food. You know, when they're small, they have to eat out the little jars and stuff. They're not eating table food yet. You try to look for the certification, because at one time, beech nut was always considered kosher for Passover with baby food. But they have since taken their certification away from beech nut, because beech nut has stopped making their food in a non-contaminated area. Okay. Baking powder, we just spoke about this. There's people use Geffen Hadar, baking powder that does not have flour in the ingredients, right? A lot of communities, I told you, believe in baking soda because it is a chemical. Candy and chocolates, because you just look and you figure, okay, this is chocolate. Chocolates have certain things in it that would make it unkosher. Sugar. If the sugar contains dextrose or glucose, it is considered not good for Passover. So we try to eat organic. If we have to use sugar, nothing that is listed with dextrose or glucose, because they may be derived from barley or wheat. Okay? So just be careful when you use your sweeteners and things of that nature. All herbal teas are found acceptable. Decaffeinated teas, you have to be careful because chametz is used to the decaffeination process. So you have to be very careful when you use decaffeinated teas. Vegetables, of course, we try to stay away from anything that's canned. We try to get all of our vegetables fresh off the rack. People say, well, what about frozen vegetables? You have to be careful with frozen vegetables also, because when they're packaged and they're made in these factories, that they can be contaminated also before they're put into the packages. Cereals, breakfast food, anything that's made from the 5 grains. You have to be very careful when you read the package. There are very few cereals, very limited few cereals that you can eat during the season, right? Coffee. A lot of people jump up and want coffee. Many years ago, most 90% of instant coffees were acceptable, but they began to enhance the flavor with maltodextrin, which is derived from barley. So you have to be very careful because most of them are not good during this season. I'm just trying to think of the main things that we use. You know, fruit. We try not to eat canned, so fresh fruit is what we look for in this season also, to buy our fruit fresh out of the store. Fish, we know about fish, long as it's fresh fish. Chicken, meats, we know that doesn't change. Okay. Honey. Be careful about the honey that you're purchasing. Pure honey from certain places are okay, but a lot of places have flavors added to it. So you have to read your labels carefully. Carefully. And I'm going to go into cheeses and citric acid since it was put on the screen. Cheeses, we'll do cheeses first, and then we'll go to the citric acid. Okay. So let's go to cheese. Most cheese is cheese. Most people know how cheese is made. Milk comes from the cow or the goat, pasteurizer goes through a process, and we come up with things for cheese. Cheese production most of the time uses rennet, R-E-N-N-E-T, rennet, an enzyme that curdles the milk, right? The rennet, that enzyme, must be from a kosher source like a microbial rennet. It can't just be any rennet. Because they have cultures rennet during the process that we must be careful of when we eat it during this season. So it's, if you have to have it, please, if you're not making it yourself, there are several kosher cheeses that are sold in the store that, along with butter, that are kosher for Passover. And why is it kosher for Passover? Because the process of making it is done without any contaminants or anything being used that would make it unstable or unusable. So can I just go to the store and buy some Cracker Barrel cheese? No, I would suggest that you go and use kosher for Passover cheese that they do sell in most Publix, Kroger's, that use the rennet to pasteurize and to hold the cheese. Everything is on the up and up. Citric acid. Let's look up the definition. Citric acid is a weak, colorless, organic acid that occurs naturally in citrus fruits, corn, and other plants and animals. It is also manufactured from a type of black mold. Citric acid has many uses, including as a food additive, preservative, and flavoring agent. It is also a common additive when they package foods and drinks, including candy, preserves, and different types of snacks. Citric acid that is derived from cane sugar is kosher for Passover, but wheat-based citric acid is considered chametz. Chametz. So there's different ways of making or processing or bringing about citric acid. So again, we have to be very careful when we read the ingredients on these packages, because there are many different planes that they come from, right? I'm going to read this whole thing to you because it's in everything, just about. Citric acid is found naturally in citrus fruits. We said that. Therefore, when you see citric acid on a product label, you can be sure that it is a powder that was made from the fermentation of sugars. A culture of Aspergillus niger, a fungus commonly used in the pharmaceutical industry, is fed with sugar and metabolizes it into a liquid solution. This solution is mixed with lime, which is calcium hydroxide, which causes citrate salt to come out of the solution. The citrate salt is then treated with sulfuric acid to make usable citric acid. Sounds really complicated. The sugars that are used from citric acid can be derived from cane sugar, corn, or wheat. In the United States, citric acid is most often derived from corn, since it is the cheapest ingredient to use to form citric acid. Is citric acid kosher? Every fermentation process causes kosher concerns due to the ingredients that are used. Kosher recommends using citric acid only with the reliable certification. Citric acid from cane sugar can be kosher for Passover. Wheat-based citric acid is definitely chametz. We cannot have that. And the corn-based citric acid is considered kitniot shenishtana, because they don't use, in a lot of communities, the corn. So if you see a product or you're looking at it and it says citric acid, you have to find out the source of how they came about with the citric acid. Okay? Because like anything else, you can make things from grain, or you can make it from fruit. You can make citric acid from corn, which is the most common way to do it, or it can be made from grains, which of course would be putting it in a section that we can't have. Okay? So again, I tell you all that if in doubt, leave it out. Stick with fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. For those of you who eat rice, try not to buy the box rice. Try to go to the organic place and buy organic rice, or a lot of the Asian markets have rice with nothing in it, right? If you feel you have to have that. Potatoes, of course, is a staple in our homes during this season. So far as your things that you use to cook and things of that nature, the only thing that I would find that you would have to get rid of is bowls that are wood. Like if you cook in bowls that are wood that can hold and they're porous, right? Put those away, because they hold, especially if you bake and you put in flours and the yeast and things of that nature, they're porous and they hold those things. And it's not good to try to boil them because it's wood and it begins to separate them, right? So, but if you have glass and things of that nature, they can be sterilized, cleaned, and with hot water, and cleaned and able to use. Is there anything else that we have left out? Is there anybody on here, on the Zoom, that has anything to add that might have found out something about something that they heard that they feel, well, I heard about this. We shouldn't eat this. We shouldn't eat that. We shouldn't eat this. Now, family, don't get me wrong. There are some communities that I think by next year, they'll only eat water. They'll only drink water because they're finding everything wrong with everything that's out there. So eventually they'll just be drinking water for 7 days and eating a potato. And soon they'll find something wrong with the potato. But to each his own, whatever makes you feel successful and good about yourself, right, is what you should do. Again, wine, because I know a lot of people drink wine during the Pesach Seder, and you go to the store and you look for your, you look for your things of that nature. And I'm gonna give you two more things, and I found something here too, because a lot of people have pets, right? So what about my pet food, right? Most pet foods contain chametz. Most pet foods, and I know some people say, well, I'm not eating it, but it says take them out of your homes. So you have to read, see what I don't know what you feed your pets. I don't have one. So you have to look at the labels, see what you give your pet. A lot of people don't feed their pet table scraps. Our dog, when we was little, came up on table scraps. So whatever we ate, that's what he ate. But a lot of people don't do those things anymore. And soda. I want to talk to you about soda. It says cook rice and chicken for the pup. Yeah. All right. So soda, because a lot of people drink soda and question about sodas and seltzers and things of that nature. Sodas must have a kosher certification due to the possibility of comments in the flavoring of the soda. So you have to be very careful with how they flavor the soda. Rice, if you're going to do rice, right? Any non-enriched, you know how when you see enriched rice, hard-boiled rice is not good. Enriched rice is not good. So any non-enriched or organic rice would be found acceptable, right? Basmati rice. Got to be careful of brown rice because it has additives, right? Salt, something that people use every day in their houses, in most houses. Be careful with salt. Check that doesn't have dextrose or polysorbates, are not part of the ingredients. Try to use Himalayan kosher salt. Now, kosher salt is very strong, so you have to use just a little bit if you use salt. Basmati rice is fine. There's nothing wrong with basmati rice, right? Just only thing I can stress, family, is that you read your ingredients. And that's why when you buy the rice, try not to buy the box rices that's quick. You know, the quick 2-minute rices, because there's certain things within those rices that would cause it to be contaminated. Wine, and I'm gonna go back to wine because it is a thing that's used by a lot of us. And margarine. Most margarines, I'm not going to say all, most margarines contain starch in their flavoring, right? So if it's not been certified kosher, you have to be very careful of if you're a person who likes to eat margarine instead of butter. And we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to do wine so that way those who look at wine, and I want to give you some of the phrases that you may see when you go and purchase your wine, for those of you who drink wine. I'm flipping through it. Give me 1 second, and I just have to flip through my notes here and find the one for the information I have for the wine. I know it's in front of me. Okay. You might see on a bottle, kosher for Passover, yayin mevushal. Say yayin mevushal, yes, because it is wine that has been cooked, right? It goes through a cooking process, but it is amongst the wines the most preferable wine. But as long as it's been certified kosher for Passover, which means only that the wine was prepared specifically for the season and that it was put together and made and watched so that it was not contaminated with any of the chametz grains, right? So is anybody on the Zoom that wants to chime in and share any information before we leave? We have 5 minutes that you want to share about any information that you may have heard, that you want to give to our family. No. Any more questions? I don't see any more in the chat concerning anything such as food products are concerned. Remember, matzahs, a lot of people buy box matzahs. We do too, to carry us through, because a lot of times you just don't feel like making none, right? So you got your box matzahs. If you make them, remember, stone ground whole wheat flour only. And whether you use water or use apple juice to flavor it, do not let it rest past that 18-minute mark so that it doesn't begin to move. Move it fast, lay them out, roll it out, put it in, and get it done. Storms.
Me stop for Passover, matzah. Make sure I say kosher for Passover, because some of them just say
matzah. When Rabbi came up with a good thing,
they be sitting in the stores and they won't take them.
Right. You go to a lot of stores and you see matzahs. They've been sitting in the back of a room for ages, and they just say matzahs. Make sure you have fresh matzahs. If you're going to buy it in a box, go to the kosher Kroger, the kosher Costco, and get the matzahs today that says kasher la Pesach, kosher for Passover. So you know that they're freshly made matzahs. Shamor matzahs. If you ever been in the store, you saw the big round matzahs. They're called shamor matzahs. They're very expensive, but those are strictly guarded matzahs. And that's why they cost so much, because they're not made as fast as the regular box matzahs. Okay? Also, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we will be in Fairburn. Contact us if you need to know where to go. Please let us know. Reserve, pay your fees. The fees are $45. for adults, and that will be for your food that we serve on the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So there's still time to get your names and money in. And right, so I hope that answered your question. They have the Shamor matzahs. Shamor means to watch or to guard. And those Shamor matzahs are guarded. They watch those. They take those and everything about them. The matzahs that we eat, like the Manischewitz and the Strites and the Goodmans, yes, they're fine. But those Shamor matzahs, people pay a lot more money for them because those are the matzahs of people who are like, yes, we know that those are less, you know, not just going down a thing and whipping it up, throwing a thing, going in, boxing. Those are strictly watched and they take more time and care in preparing those matzahs. Right, so the last day, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we will be at Fairburn at the clubhouse. You can go on any one of our ladder YouTubes that we just had and look at the end of it and look at our announcements and you'll see it, the flyer. The seventh day will be back at the Reservoir in Hampton, Georgia for the seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? So if you still have time, it's not too late to send us your name so that we know that you're coming, to pay your fees, and we pray to see all of you there. I know all questions weren't answered, but again, just be careful. If you're in doubt, leave it out. I'll say it again. I can't stress it anymore. If in doubt, just leave it out. Try to buy all your vegetables fresh, your potatoes and everything fresh. Stay away from canned products, box products as much as you can, and macaroni products. Let me talk about that because a lot of people like spaghetti, noodles, things like that. Stay away from noodles, macaronis, and things like that because they go through a process. And even though they say, well, that's just flour and water, again, the process has to be watched because otherwise contamination takes place. So eat you a lot of fried potatoes, mashed potatoes, vegetables during this season. And we, again, while all of you are here, we want to announce that we will be going live at 8 o'clock Erev Shabbat, Motzai Shabbat. After the Shabbat is over, just before it gets dark and the day changes, we will be acknowledging the memorial of the Pesach. And then we will have our Seder, and we ask all of you who are doing your Seder at home to join us. Come on Zoom, share your Seder table with us. Share your Seder table. We will be reading from the Passover Haggadah that was created by the International Israelite Rabbis, along with Rabbi Shalomo, who spearheaded it. And we will be reading the prayers from the Haggadah and telling the story as is commanded by Torah. It says, when thy children ask of thee, what mean you by this service? And we have to have the service to answer the question. So again, we thank you. And if you do have any questions later on, reach out to myself or to Zakwain Moshe, any of our people here, and we'll get you an answer. Okay? So enjoy. We look forward to seeing you Shabbat as is at 11 a.m. We'll have our regular Shabbat service on Zoom. And Shabbat Zav is the Shabbat, and it's also Shabbat HaChodesh, right? Shabbat Hagadol, excuse me, the great Sabbath, Shabbat Hagadol. So we will see you all prior to. And those of you who we don't, we'll see you all Shabbat. And then we'll try to give you any last minute information before Pesach. And For all of you who are coming, please let people know. So be there. And yes, okay, Torah Rabbi, Sister Seraphine, you can close. May the Most High bless each and every one of you. And again, if you have any questions, reach out. We'll try to answer your questions. And I know there's a few people on here who were looking for Sister Yerusha's recipe for ketchup and mayonnaise. I will get that link so that you can share it and you can have it so you can make it during this season. God bless. If there's no more questions, we're going to end this meeting together. And I pray it was conducive and you got some information out of it. Lala Tov all. May Yah bless you and keep you. I hope to see